Welcome to today's webinar. It's really lovely to have you all here. I'm Bethany Helliwell-Smith, and I've spent my career working in the charity sector as a fundraiser and now as the founder of Awen Coaching. I work with fundraisers, founders, and freelancers to help them to build ways of working that allow them to do good work, crucially, without burning themselves out. And today I'm really delighted to be joined by Phoebe Broad, who's the director of Constellation Fundraising. Would you like to introduce yourself, Phoebe?
Thanks, Bethany. Hi, everybody. I'm Phoebe. I'm a fundraising consultant and I run Constellation Fundraising. I've been a fundraiser forever, and I've worked with some massive international organisations and also teeny tiny startups. I predominantly focus my work on small charities, as I believe that they are genuinely the backbone of our society and they're the places that need the most help. And so that's what I do. I work across fundraising streams, so I don't really have a niche. I tend to work across all different types of fundraising. I've got a mega busy life. I've got two little boys. My husband's in the police. I've got lots of pets alongside the business, so I'm always looking for ways to make my life more efficient, more productive. And I find AI really helps me with that. I've been interested in AI for a very long time. And last year I did a certificate in AI leadership at the University of Hull, to kind of learn a little bit more. And I reached out to Bethany and I said, I think that we should do something about AI and fundraising and burnout and productivity. And here we are with 75 of you. So thank you for coming.
Clearly, we've struck a nerve with this one. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here. Thank you, Phoebe. Between us, we've lived and breathed fundraising and seen the sector from many different angles. So whether you're joining us from an in-house role today or as a freelancer, we want to kind of acknowledge that the fact that you've given up an hour of your time is no small thing. We hope that this feels like a supportive moment in your day and time well spent, not just another demand on your energy. This session is intentionally not a technical training or a race to keep up with the latest AI tools. Instead, it's going to be a calm, honest conversation about how AI shows up in charities, in fundraising, and in our businesses, and our lives, in our busy family lives. So how we kind of engage with it is intentional. So it really supports our work and our well-being at the same time. You don't have to have any prior knowledge. There's no expectation that you leave here using more AI. The aim really is to have clarity, confidence, and make some intentional choices about AI moving forward. So let's get a sense of the room before we dive in. How are you feeling about AI right now? Use the chat. Even one word is perfect. We would love to know, are you excited? Are you scared? Are you behind, excited, conflicted, frustrated, skeptical, unclear? I love it, curious,
A
threatened.
lot of conflicted.
Yeah, conflicted, absolutely. Extremely worried. Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. Love it. Conflicted. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Curious and conflicted. I think that's probably summing up me. How are you feeling about it, Phoebe?
Conflicted, I think, is a really good way to think about it. I think I'm optimistic about it, but
Mm,
also I think that we have to acknowledge that tech companies aren't traditionally known for being trustworthy places. So I think that there is, it's a bit scary. I think there's a
mm,
lot of noise about it, and I think that all the noise about it can make it seem even more scary.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's have a think about why this conversation matters today. It's clear from how many of you are in the room today that you think that this is an important conversation. And I think it's also really important to name the context that we're all working within. Fundraising is already very intense. results. Targets are rising, teams are stretched, reporting demands keep growing, and many of you are doing emotionally demanding work alongside the spreadsheets and the strategies. If you're freelance, income can feel uncertain, boundaries with clients can blur, and there are, a constant sense that you need to kind of prove your value and stay relevant. And AI has really landed into this environment, and that matters. When new tools are introduced without enough time, training, or ethical guidance, they don't automatically make things better. They can quietly become another expectation, another thing to keep up with, another way pressure creeps in. At the same time, it's also true that the charity sector has a responsibility to use its resources really well. Efficiency matters. Not so we can work harder or faster for the sake of it, but so that we can have more time, energy, and funding directly going towards relationships and impact. Used thoughtfully, tools like AI can help with that. They can reduce time spent on admin, support clearer thinking, and really free up capacity for the parts of fundraising that genuinely need that human care and judgment. So let's have a look at what we're going to be covering today. I want to be really clear about what success looks like for this hour. It's not about leaving using AI for everything. We're not going to have it decide what you're all going to have for dinner. Like, it needs to be intentional with what we're using it for. It's a chance really today for you to leave with a clearer sense of what is useful, what isn't, and where the risks are. We want to have this open conversation. It's scary and it's risky, but we want to have this conversation because so many people that we're working with, clients of mine, clients of Phoebe's, are really worried about this. So we just want to be super transparent today and give you some low stakes ways of trying to test AI and how it could work for you that can protect your well-being and still keep you aligned to your values. So if this session helps you feel less alone and more able to make informed decisions, then Phoebe and I have done our job. Let's hear from Phoebe on what AI actually is, because I didn't know lots of this when we were discussing it, so I'm excited.
There we go. So I use AI a lot, and so do you. Every time you ask Alexa something, every time Netflix suggests something that you might like to watch, every time your car sensors tell you that you're near a bollard, or every time you unlock your phone with your face, every time that you go on your social media feeds, ask Google to suggest you a route on maps, you are using AI. Obviously, ChatGPT gets a lot of talk around, but that is just one area of AI. So what is AI? It is artificial intelligence refers to computer systems that spot patterns, that learn from data, that make predictions or decisions, and they carry out tasks that usually need human judgment. So in simple terms, it analyzes large amounts of data, it finds patterns, and then it predicts what's most likely to happen next. It is not conscious, it has no feelings or intentions yet. It does not think or understand like humans. It has to be trained on how to think things through. It doesn't know fact, it predicts answers. It's not always accurate and it can be very confidently wrong. Hallucinating is probably a term that you've come across where it makes up ideas and information. This was recently seen in a really high profile case with West Midlands Police when they they banned fans from coming along to a Sevilla game, and it was because the game, they'd spoken to ChatGPT about it, and the game and the evidence they'd based their assumptions off were hallucinations that had been created by ChatGPT. So it's really careful. You need to be really careful to make sure you are not trusting everything it says. It cannot replace human judgment, ethics, or context. But how it works, basically, and especially ChatGPT, because I think at the end of the day, that's what we're all interested in, is ChatGPT and other large language models, or LLMs as we would call them. They are trained in advance on really large data sets. So that's from information from voice records, from documents that people have uploaded into the system. It learns patterns through something called machine learning, which is basically how our brains work, in that we learn things. And like, for example, if you've seen children trying to like do those shape sorter things, and they try and put the circle in the square, and they learn very quickly that the circle goes in the circle. That's basically an example of machine learning. It uses short-term context, stay coherent, um, and it generates response by predicting likely language, but not by understanding it. But we thought that next we could do a very quick true or false, just to start doing a bit of myth busting. So pop what you think in the chat. The first one is AI is older than the internet. What do you think? True or false? True, 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 false, false, true, lots of trues, false. Real
That's so
mixture,
interesting.
yeah, true, yeah,
I thought
cool.
everybody for sure would just be like false.
So this
Amazing.
is true. Um, we thought it'd be useful and maybe helpful to do like a really brief history of AI. So it has been developing for much longer than most people realise. The idea dates back to the 1950s when Alan Turing of the Enigma machine and imitation game fame asked whether machines could think, and he proposed the Turing test. The internet was first floated in the 60s before becoming an actual thing in 1983. So the therapist, basically, and they were rule based and they mimicked conversations without real understanding. From the 90s, AI shifted towards machine learning, which we talked about earlier, where systems learn patterns from data, and this powered tools like spam filters, fraud detection, algorithm recommendations, like Netflix saying you might like to watch this. And a major milestone came in 1990. Absolutely no way that computers could play chess. And that was really a big step forward when they realized that, oh, no, they can do that. The biggest acceleration happened in the 2010s, driven by vast data, faster computing, much better systems, and more recently, generative AI tools like ChatGPT.
Oh, I think we're losing Phoebe a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's
Okay,
better.
great. Sorry, I'm in a shared office space today in a room, but I'm not on my current Wi-Fi, my usual Wi-Fi. Looking ahead, some computer scientists believe that we might see more autonomous forms of AI within the next decade, sort of known as like super AI, which is a little bit scary, and that starts to get a little bit Terminatory. And we've already seen examples of AI learning and creating its own languages, teaching itself things that it didn't think that we wanted it to know. So yeah, there's definitely been a huge acceleration of AI over the last, I would say, 3 years, since 2022, and ChatGPT became a much more open source. So next slide, please.
What do we think, guys? Is this one true or false? Can you pop it in the chat? This one's a bit more obvious. Nice. False, 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 false. I'm always polite just in case. Yeah. We
Me
we said
too.
that, didn't we, Phoebe? We were like, oh,
Yeah,
we don't want to be the first one that they come and get, so we're just going to be polite just in case.
yeah. There's that meme that's like, we will be kind to them because, like, it's always like robots, like, we will be kind to
Yeah.
her because she always said please and thank you. So
Yeah. I'm all right
there
with
we
just
go.
typing
So
an extra word just to be sure.
yeah. So this is false.
Oh, we're losing you, Phoebe. I'll help you out on this one. Yeah, this is a myth. It's a useful one to unpack because politeness doesn't improve the quality of the output. It's nice to be polite, but it doesn't necessarily change the output. It's designed to feel, you know, conversational. So it's easy to kind of start treating something like ChatGPT like it's a person. And I've worked with clients before that have had, you know, a name for them, or they'll refer to them as a man or a woman or whatever it is. And yeah, I'd be interested to know in the chat if you've got kind of a personality for your ChatGPT, or if they're like, if you've got a name for them, or any kind of yeah, any thoughts on what you imagine when you're using it. That would be interesting. The next one is AI is neutral and objective. What do we think? Oh, Isabel's ChatGPT is called Janet. Love. Most people are saying false for this one. AI is neutral and objective. My husband looked over my shoulder when I was doing these slides, and he didn't realize I was doing a true and false. And he was like, "That's wrong." I was like, "No, don't worry, it's okay." It's a true or false situation. So this one's false. It's yeah, it's actually one of the biggest ethical issues in our sector when it comes to AI in the charity sector, because AI really reflects the data that it has been trained on. And the data includes bias and inequality and gaps in representation. So it can reproduce stereotypes or kind of centric perspectives and miss nuance, especially when it comes to marginalized communities. In the charity sector, that really matters because we often work with people whose stories are being misrepresented or oversimplified or exploited. We also hold sensitive information, and we we have safeguarding responsibilities. So we have real duties of care when it comes to how we're using AI. And we need to be kind of critical and values and have a values-led mindset when we're approaching this, and not just assume that objectivity is coming from ChatGPT just because it's worded in a way that sounds very professional. We've just got to sense check everything. So with that in mind, then, AI raises many ethical issues that are important to acknowledge, even when we do choose to still use it. There are, of course, environmental concerns, particularly the energy and water used by data centers, like the one on that slide. They are huge. There's also labour issues that often go unseen. Many AI systems actually do rely on human workers to label data, moderate content, and the work is frequently outsourced to people in low-income countries, sometimes including refugee communities, and is often poorly paid and sometimes really emotionally demanding. People might well be having to kind of block really distressing content from being generated. So you can imagine the kind of emotional toll that would take on somebody. So those human contributions are largely invisible to us as end users, but they are part of how these tools function. There are also concerns about bias and fairness because AI, as we mentioned, reflects the data it's trained on. Which means actually it can reproduce existing inequalities if used uncritically. So this is, you know, it's fine to kind of say, can you give me a summary of the demographic of a certain area? But do your research, ask it for sources, make sure that you're sense checking it with other sources of information that you have available to you. None of this makes AI any more inherently unethical than any use of technology. And I want to make that really clear because, as Sarah Jane put in the chat, there's so much judgmental language being used, almost like, oh, if I use AI, I'm going to get caught out. Like, we need to move past that. And I think it's really, really important that we recognize that any use of technology, whether you've got an iPhone, whether you have an electric car, even anything you choose to do, has ethical considerations. But with AI, it does mean its use requires awareness, restraint, and clear human oversight to the things that I would really like you to focus on. For charities in particular, AI shouldn't be treated as a special case. Decisions about using it should really sit with the same ethical framework that you already apply to things like funding, partnerships, and general risks for your organization. That helps really to ensure that any use of AI is proportionate, transparent, and aligned with your values as an organization or as a consultant. For anybody that wants to explore this further, the Code of Fundraising Practice is a really helpful reference point for ethical decision making in this area. Sarah, perhaps if you could find the link for that. It's these two articles here that I've got on the screen. Hopefully Sarah can pop it in the chat for you at some point. But yeah, it's a really useful tool to kind of sense check how you're using it and making sure that you're happy with how you're using it on screen as well. Phoebe, are you with us?
I'm back. I've swapped network, so I'm hoping that
Lovely.
this one will last. So I'm really
Okay.
sorry
I'm
if
glad because you're the
it's not
expert on
working.
this one.
Yeah, good
You.
luck. um, so we thought it would be useful to just kind of highlight a couple of the tools that we use. A couple is quite a lot there, and how we use how we use them. You'll hear lots of AI tools mentioned in conversations, and it can very quickly start to feel like you should be trying all of them. I'm a proper magpie for systems and different new ways of doing things and new apps. So I feel like I've tried most things. But you absolutely don't need to do that. In practice, the biggest gains usually come from using one or two tools consistently and safely rather than always swapping. And also because things are changing so quickly and so much now, we're sort of seeing that standalone tools are starting to amalgamate with others. So Zoom can now act as a transcriber and will send you follow-up emails and things like that. So you don't have to have another third party app. Similar to Copilot and Gemini, a lot of things can all be done within one place. So these are the ones that we use. Claude is similar to ChatGPT. I think everyone has heard of ChatGPT. I find Claude a bit friendlier and has a nicer interface, and can really help with writing. Gemini for obviously Google native things, and Copilot for Microsoft. A couple of people in the chat have mentioned it, but Perplexity is a fantastic research tool. And I believe that if you have got a council email address, you can have free access to, or like a Gov email address, you can have free access to Perplexity. Speechify I find really useful because it reads documents to you, and you can have celebrities do it, like Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm pretty sure there's a Matthew McConaughey voice. There's definitely a Snoop Dogg voice. So any documents that you want to do, or if you're driving and you want to listen to documents rather than reading them, or read and listen at the same time, Speechify is super useful for that. If you're in-house, you might have specific policies, licenses, or restrictions around AI use. And obviously that needs to be adhered to. It will be for safeguarding reasons. It's there to protect data, relationships, and trust. But if you're freelance, you might be navigating multiple client expectations and different comfort levels with AI. It's always a conversation that I have upfront with my clients around AI use, around how they use it and how they want us to use it. And we have clauses in contracts about how we use AI, how we store their data, basically an extension to a GDPR notice, so that we're all on the same page and that we've all got understanding of how we're using AI for a piece of work. One client might welcome it, another can be really against it, and a part of your role, whether in-house or not, is making careful, transparent choices about what's appropriate for each piece of work. So the question isn't really which tool is best, it's what's appropriate for the work that you're doing, the data that you've got, and the people that you are working with. Choosing tools intentionally also means recognizing neurodiversity and making space for different ways of thinking, processing, and working. People work and process information totally differently. So the most useful tools are often the ones that support accessibility and reduce friction rather than forcing everybody to work in the same way. And I think like people use all types of technology differently, and AI is really no different. It's around the kind of the comfort levels that you have for your technology use, and listening to what your gut says on that.
Totally. I'd love to add as well that I've got dyslexia, and I found AI most helpful, not for speed or productivity, but for support. Things like structuring ideas, organizing thoughts, or reducing the time I spend and the effort I spend on writing and admin. It's been absolutely a game changer for my work with clients and my business. And I think used in that way, it makes work more accessible without lowering standards. And that's really a kind of useful reminder that AI can support different ways of thinking and working. So I wanted to look at this through a challenge that I see constantly in fundraising is burnout, and whether you're people working in-house or freelance, the people that burn out, the people that come to me for coaching that are struggling with stress and trying to juggle everything, are rarely the ones that who don't care. They're actually the ones that really don't want to let supporters down. They don't want to let colleagues down. They don't want to let beneficiaries down. And over time, they start carrying more and more responsibility for income, relationships, and sometimes even for keeping whole organizations afloat. Your brain never really gets to rest. And when boundaries around time and attention are weak, it's really important to try and stop that kind of load just keeping on accumulating. So this is where AI becomes relevant but also risky, and I just wanted to draw attention to the ways in which AI can help, but also the way in which AI can harm your well-being. It can interact with burnout in these two very different directions. Used intentionally, it can reduce cognitive load. It can help you prioritize when everything feels urgent. It can take on low energy, repetitive tasks off your plate. So you can use your thinking and your emotional energy where it really matters. But used without conscious thoughts, it can actually do the opposite. It can increase pressure, speed up expectations, and create an unspoken sense that you should be producing more, responding faster, or being available for longer, simply because the tool exists or you've set a precedent for that your output has increased. Anyone else experiencing that at all in the sector? Is that something that you're aware of, kind of the expectations of your output and the speed in which you work is has increased with AI being available? So let's make it practical. AI helps when it gives you back thinking time. That might be summarizing a long document, structuring a messy set of notes, or offering a starting point when your brain's tired. And, nobody should be looking at a blank page anymore in 2026. It's definitely helpful for getting word block sorted out. But the focus here really should be on intention and boundaries. If AI is helping you feel clearer, calmer, and more focused, it's doing something useful. If it's making you feel rushed, stretched, or feeling like your quality is lowering, or feeling like you should never switch off or can never switch off, that's a signal to pause and reset how you're using it. Burnout is not a personal failure, it's a systems issue. And any tool that we bring into that system needs to be handled with care. Otherwise, it can just accelerate the problem we're all trying to solve. A key part of sustainability in when it comes to your workloads is noticing how these tools affect your workload, your expectations, and your boundaries. Tell us how you use it, Phoebe.
Um, so this is where AI can become really genuinely useful. Obviously, I want to caveat this by saying everybody has got their own levels of thresholds. Everyone has got different comfort levels of how much they're willing to put through ChatGPT or other similar models. And I think just because one person does something, you shouldn't feel pressured into doing it. And I think, as we sort of alluded to earlier, in an ideal world with plenty of time and money, we might not need tools like this to help us with our work in the sector. But charities and the people they support need us to work as efficiently as possible. And I think that that's where AI can really come into itself by helping charities to get the most value possible out of fundraised income. It's important to be clear what AI is doing. It's not setting strategy, it's not building relationships. It can help with structure, with language, with research, and saving on low value tasks. So some places that it can really help is in that early research and summaries place, understanding funders, potential companies, using places like Perplexity to do research. If there's pages and pages of CSR documents, popping that through so you can get a really quick summary of what that's saying. Drafting emails and newsletters in your own voice, but also helping you to stay consistent with the brand voice of your organisation. So you can create projects, give it information about how you want to talk as an organisation, whether that's your own charity or your own business. And it can help you to draft emails, supporter comms, all within that same tone, using that correct language. It can help with structuring proposals, reports, and templates. I find it really useful for when you get those awful online grant forms that you can't save, you can't go back to, and you're trying to pull the information out and do it offline. And instead of having to kind of copy and paste it, or you can copy and paste it into ChatGPT and ask it to pop it into a table for you, which is my preferred way of writing a bid in a table. And it takes seconds for it to do it rather than me having to reformat tables and things like that. And can also help with pulling in points from the guidance documents for proposals, but also for reports as well. It can be really helpful for reformatting budgets and answers for grant forms if you're sort of trying to shoehorn a budget into a proposal, or if you're trying to make sense of the numbers that you've got and scale things up and down, and if maths isn't your best asset. It can be really helpful for cutting text to tight word or character limits. I don't know about you, but postcode lottery is one that it gives you like 10 characters to explain all of your charity mission. So that could be really helpful to try and narrow that right down. But also, if you've got that proper brain block part, like Bethany talked about earlier, and saying like, I sort of want to say this, but I don't really know how to say this, it can give you a bit of a jumping off point. So you're not sitting there thinking, come on, brain. It can really help you to kind of move your own thoughts forward. And it's really helpful for meeting notes and for stewardship follow-ups and CRM updates. If you transcribe meetings, or if you have like Copilot in a Microsoft meeting, or use Google or Zoom, or tools like Otter or Fathom, if you use those, that can help you to get really great summaries from meetings or calls with either donors or clients or corporates or trust management supporters, so that you can then just copy and paste that information straight into your CRM system, which is just cutting down on that admin time, which gives you back more time to be able to actually focus on your job and actually do the bits that we like to do, like building the relationships, finding the money, not all of the admin. I think as a freelancer, it helps me cut a lot of that extra stuff that you have to do as a freelancer and a business owner, like writing up emails, writing up documents, keeping my own records up to date. But it also can help in-house teams to gain space for more strategy, more relationships, and generally the stuff that we want to do as a fundraiser, not the admin bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because fundraising is really relational, isn't it? It's about trust, timing, empathy, judgment, and AI can't replace that, and we shouldn't want it to either. Even when AI stops, like supports things like drafting, the human has to shape the tone and the intention. We have to ask, does this sound like us? Does it respect our supporters? Does it honor the people that we serve? And is it accurate? Your role is not being replaced. If anything, your judgment is actually becoming more valuable. Work generated through AI should never be the final product. Everything should be checked, especially before going public facing. And it also shouldn't be used to kind of make final decisions on things as well. It can absolutely be a kind of trust it, like a kind of thought, help you do that like thought part, but you need to be making the final decisions as somebody within an organization or as a freelancer for sure. Um, I wanted to kind of think about some guardrails here, not rules, not restrict. This is not about being restrictive, but they are about being values led and protecting your energy. And these are certainly the things that Phoebe and I think about when we're using AI in our businesses and with our clients. A simple place to start is deciding what AI is for you. So it could be drafting, summarizing, structuring, ideas generation. Then you need to decide what it's not for. And that could be anything involving sensitive personal data, safeguarding information, confidential donor details like names, addresses, phone numbers, that kind of thing, or decisions that require that human judgment that I was speaking about before. Intentional use really does include asking, does this tool align with our values? And what policies do we need so it doesn't quietly undermine them? And like we were saying before, it shouldn't be necessarily taken as a standalone issue for your charity. It should absolutely be a broader issue on how you use technology in general, and how you support that. Even a simple rule like no sensitive data or always sense check outputs is a really helpful place to start. Phoebe.
Sorry, I was just responding to something in the chat.
No, you're fine.
So I think many of us can leave meetings with half actions, vague next steps, a lot of mental load, and that's exhausting. As we do this, obviously, we don't want to automate relationships. We don't want to take away that human authenticity of relationships.
Mm.
However, if you are like me and you sort of dump random bits down in different notebooks, or sometimes you're using different ways, like half of it's type notes, half of it's other things. You might have some notes from like Otter or Zoom that can be really helpful to kind of pull together and give to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini and just say, what am I doing? What did I say I would do? What are these notes? Or to make them a little bit more cohesive, especially if you're kind of following up after meetings. Sometimes I can find it really useful to just have a massive brain dump, and for it to kind of help me clear out my brain after a meeting so that it kind of makes sense of stuff. Another example of this is around facilitation, and I facilitated an away day for a large organisation. There were about 150 attendees there, and the day had 3 different exercises with loads of post-it notes and A3 diagrams, handwritten notes, loads of Sharpies. Great day. But it created a huge amount of paper afterwards that we had to go through and make sense of. So after the session, I scanned everything using an app on my phone called Cam Scanner, if any of you need a good phone scanning app. And that was the thing that took the longest time. That took about 20 minutes to scan these hundreds of pieces of paper. And then I put it through ChatGPT to transcribe it. I made sure that anything that would identify any people or would identify any organisation would be cut out of that. But that gave me all the raw data that I needed in a much more usable format very quickly. So instead of me spending hours typing up all of these notes, it meant that I could focus my time and also what the client had paid for on analysing the themes, drawing conclusions, working on the next steps. And the result was really simple. It just meant that less time on admin was more of my time spent for the client, what they're actually paying for, not just my admin, which is obviously what I want to do more, not just admin. And also it meant that the client got a better value for the work that we were doing together. Some people had asked in the before the meeting for some case study examples of where we've used AI with some of our charity clients and where it has potentially had an impact. So I supported a small, very time poor and very cash poor charity who were taking part in the Big Give. I'd worked with them previously. I wasn't working with them on the Big Give, but I have done a lot of Big Gives in my time. And by day 3 of the Big Give, they had raised very little, and they'd done practically no proactive asking. They had about £300 that had been gifted. The CEO reached out to me, totally panicked, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And to see if there's anything that I could do to help. Capacity and cash was the issue, not the commitment, not the story. I was really happy to support them pro bono, but I didn't have a huge amount of time to do it. So I used AI to support me so I could support them. I pulled together all the existing information that they had on the appeal, the story they were trying to tell, who they were going to talk to, what that email sequence could potentially look like. And then I put that into ChatGPT in a project. So if you create a project in ChatGPT and you do things within that, it kind of, it keeps the language going, it keeps everything all together in one place. So you haven't got to keep reminding it or uploading things to say, this is how I want you to talk. I said what I wanted to create and what I thought was the best sequence for them to go through in this process. And it just helped me to draft the right emails, written in the CEO voice with those clear urgency, versions of different supporter groups. I reviewed and edited everything, sent it over to them, putting it all into MailChimp was the thing that took the longest amount of time. But within 24 hours of getting this direct ask out to their database with the slightly differing stories, they'd raised £15,000, and then by the end of the campaign, they raised just over £30,000. And it was their most successful email appeal to date. So AI didn't replace the strategy or the judgment, it just reduced the time needed to turn a clear plan into content when it mattered most, basically.
That's amazing, Phoebe.
And also, I feel like I should add to that, sorry, that the client was very happy for me to use AI. We cleared that out before we started working together, saying like, this is possible to help you with this, but it's going to have some sort of AI assistance for the quantity and quality that you need.
Totally. Thank you, Phoebe. I want to include this as well because AI is not just a writing tool. One of the most helpful uses, especially for preventing overwhelm, is actually using it as a bit of a planning partner. So we can ask AI to help us map a realistic day based on deadlines, capacity, energy, and time constraints. It can really help you to pop in your to-do list and really get thinking about what's urgent, what's important, what can be delegated, what can be paused for a couple of months. We can ask it to help us choose one or two tasks that are going to make the biggest difference today. And we can also use gentle accountability prompts that support follow through without turning the day into kind of a productivity contest. We're not about that. The goal here is to have calm progress, not pressure. So having an interface like ChatGPT where you can say, look, this is everything I want to achieve this month. Please pop it into a kind of supportive and realistic time frame of what I need to start with first and where I need to get to. And that's been really beneficial for a lot of my clients that I coach who have got ridiculously high workloads and are just really trying to make sure that they're prioritizing their tasks and able to kind of properly switch off at the end of the day. I'm sure a lot of you who follow me have come across my daily wrap-up routine. I'll perhaps share it afterwards, but it's really helpful to include AI into that so that you're properly switching off your brain and allowing yourself to really live your life and not be stuck focusing on work all the time. So if you take one thing from today, let it be this: small shifts beat big overhauls. There's no need to change everything at once. Choose one task, perhaps one you've been procrastinating on, and try using AI there. See if it unlocks something for you. Something that takes time or mental effort, but doesn't need your best thinking. Something that you can look over afterwards. Something that you've been thinking, I just can't unlock this. I know there's a problem here and I can't solve it. Have a chat back and forth and see if there's something you can, some idea or something you can do that will really kind of benefit that task in particular. Be clear about what you'll use it for and what you won't. So what boundaries might you set that could be around the time you spend on it. Things like, I like timers on everything really. I've got timers set on my Instagram, so it tells me like you've spent enough time on this today and it kicks me out, although you can very easily ignore it, which is a shame. But things like that, can you set a timer on how much you use AI in any given day and kind of keep that to a minimum, both ethically because you're not using it too much, but also for your own brain and your well-being. It could be about stopping once you've got a first draft or a bit of a structure, instead of going back and being like, change this bit, change this bit, change this bit. Maybe that's something that you take out of the system and do that manually. And always sense check what comes back. AI can sound really confident without being right. And your judgment is what really helps to keep work ethical and appropriate. So notice what feels lighter. If using AI frees up your energy and reduces your mental load, that's useful. If it adds pressure, makes you feel guilty, then adjust and step back. The aim isn't to do more here, it's to work in a way that feels really sustainable. Thank you for all of the chat. It's amazing to see all these questions. We're going to do a quick Q&A in a minute. I just wanted to say that if you're sitting here thinking, this all makes sense, but I'm still carrying too much on my own, then this is exactly who my one-to-one Do Good, Be Well coaching program is for. It's often the people that I work with that feel like they're constantly holding pressure, struggling to switch off, even when they're feeling absolutely exhausted, or kind of questioning whether this pace is something that you can keep up long term. The problem usually isn't lack of skill or commitment. It's actually that the way that you're working is set up doesn't hold when things get really busy and urgent, as they often do on the roller coaster of the charity sector. So the work that we do together in the Do Good, Be Well program is about changing that. Over 12 weeks through 6 focus one-on-one coaching sessions, we'll redesign how you work, not by adding more tools or asking you to try harder, but by actually creating steadier rhythms, clearer boundaries, and decisions on how you actually can trust the way you're working under pressure. So if this is of interest to you, you can book a free compatibility call through that link. And I would love to have a conversation with you about if it's something that would support you to feel calmer, more grounded, less guilty, and more yourself again in the turbulence of the charity sector. All the details are on my website. There's no pressure at all. It's just a gentle next step if you're ready for work that feels a bit more possible again. And I'd love Phoebe to tell you a little bit about her lovely Constellation fundraising as well.
Sure. So this is absolutely not a sales pitch, but just so you know who we are and what we do, and if that's of any use to you at some point in the future. So we help small charities unlock bigger income with expert support that's friendly, that's strategic, that's personal, and is built around charities that we work with. We do this by essentially building mini fundraising teams that we then drop into organisations, so we can help you on really anything that you need some help with through strategy development, bid writing, appeals, campaigns, legacies, corporate developments, capital appeals. We are a bank of associates that work together and, like I say, kind of form mini fundraising teams with the charity gets a sort of head of fundraising point of contact. So you don't have to deal with a whole team of people, just one, and we help you get stuff done quickly, efficiently. We're all people who've worked in the sector for a very long time. We've seen a lot of change, we've seen a lot of new things. And we're here really just to try and help make your fundraising feel less scary, less worrying, and are always happy to just have a chat with anybody who wants to chat fundraising. And after Bridget's comments, I feel like maybe we need to write and deliver some AI training. So I'll add that to my list of things to do, because that would be quite fun.
Your long list. Thank you,
It'll go to the
Phoebe.
top because it's more exciting than a lot of the other things on
That's
the
true.
list.
Yeah, it's new and shiny.
Yeah.
We'd love your questions. I've seen many pop up through the chat. Please note that Phoebe and I absolutely do not have all the answers, but we are welcome, we welcome a kind of open, honest conversation. I know some of you may have a hard stop at 1 o'clock, and if that's you, then thank you ever so much for being here. We really, really appreciate your time, and your input into the chat has been amazing. So thank you so much. Sarah, did you note down a few questions?
Yes,
I have noted down some questions, sorry, and some answers.
Perfect.
Jump in there.
I think I was going to say, I think the ones that I've noted are ones that Phoebe's already flagged. So
Okay.
if you want to go for it, Phoebe.
Sure. Sorry, Sarah, I stole your job there. One of the questions that I saw was around it kind of holding data. So if you put information into ChatGPT, for example, if I told it today that what my meal plan was going to be for the week, like Claire just said that she does her meal planning, as do I, on ChatGPT, it wouldn't necessarily remember that the next time I used it. If it thinks that it's really important information, or I can tell it that it needs to remember that in its memory, so that next time I say, what should I have for tea? It could say, right, I know that you really like spaghetti bolognese on a Wednesday, so you can have that, but it won't remember that unless I tell it to. And that's the same with all of the information that goes into it. You'll see when you use things like ChatGPT, like Claude, other large language models, it will have a number. So like at the moment, I use ChatGPT 5.2, and that is the name of the model. And you can see when that model was last trained. I meant to check that before this call and I forgot. But the model before this was last updated in September 2025. So all of the information that's actually stored in the system and how it responds and things like that was trained in 2025. So for example, it would be like if you're playing a video game. So when you play the game, you get to a certain point, you unlock certain lives and things like that, different worlds for your survival. I spend a lot of my time playing Minecraft. not wanting to, as an 8-year-old boy for you. But all of that doesn't overwrite the core of the game. So you can do stuff in ChatGPT, but it doesn't overwrite it. So that's a very long way of me saying it doesn't hold your data. It uses it to help inform it make short-term decisions, but it doesn't train the overall model. That's done on a much larger scale, and that's where some of those ethical concerns come in around how it gets that data, but it's not from what you put into it. One of the other ones, which is similar, was around if you use it for drafting, and does it plagiarize things? And that really depends on what you give it. So if you say to it, can you write me a case for support for a community centre in Hull? It is going to be really basic and really vague, and it will hallucinate information. But if you give it more information and say, like, there's a community centre on this estate, this is information of the estate, kind of raw data, or this is what they do, and this is how they do it, and this is who's involved, it will tidy it up for you and just help you kind of move that draft along. So it all depends on what you feed it. As with anything, I'm sure most of you will have used a CRM system at some point in your life. Not everyone's favourite thing, but it's a similar principle in that CRM systems are only as good as the data that you put into them. So if you keep them really up to date with loads of information about conversations that you've had, supporters you've spoken to, history, you can use it much better. If there's no information in it, it's not worth having. And it's very similar to AI because it's all data driven.
That's such a good way of describing it, Phoebe. I love that. There's nothing worse than like an empty CRM, is there? It just doesn't do anything for you. So yeah,
you take over a role and it's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
we'll figure this out.
Totally, yeah. Oh, amazing. Has anybody else got any questions? You're welcome to come off mute and have a proper convo with us if you would like to.
I think one of the really big things that has popped up several times is around ethics.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's a really, really difficult one, because I think Tamsin came up with a really valid point around, actually, if we knew how much damage the things that we use every day caused when we started using them, would we have carried on using them in the way that we do? And I don't know about that, honestly. And I think everyone's got a different threshold about where their ethics are, don't they? It's similar to different charities. They'll accept money from different causes and not from organisations and not from others. But I think it's a really important question, and I think it's something that probably isn't talked about enough around AI, because I think you really have to dig into it to find out what the ethical concerns are. The whole way through the course that I did, not once were ethical concerns mentioned. They're computer scientists, so that's where they're most interested. But I think that we need to keep that conversation going, and we need to keep that conversation alive, I think, around where do we sit with ethics.
Totally. Yeah,
I think, if you don't mind me jumping in just to say, I think it's a completely unanswerable question, in the sense of, like, it's that sliding doors thing, isn't it? Like I say, for me, I think, had we known about like moderation practices for stuff that is like incorporated into our daily lives, like Google, like the Meta stuff, would we have just carried on down that path? And it's impossible to say that, yes, we would have gone, sure, yeah, we'll carry on, we don't mind, or whether we'd have said, oh, hang on, let's pull back and let's really I think, like you said, Bethany, a few times, in making intentional decisions rather than just blindly going along with things. And yeah, I agree. It's up to everyone to set their tolerances. I think as long as people have awareness. For us, we're an international development charity. I know ChatGPT outsourced moderation to an organisation in Kenya that exploited its workers, didn't offer psychosocial support, and paid them really poorly. That contributes to poverty. That's what we're actively working to alleviate. So for me personally, ChatGPT is a real red line. But I know that not every model is the same. Maybe they are. That's kind of the
I totally hear you. You can't be using ChatGPT to do a funding application to get money to support the people. Then it's just a mess, isn't it? I totally hear you, Tamsin. Thank you.
It would be like BP giving a donation to an environmental charity, wouldn't it? The two things just don't align with each other. I did see that each query that you put through ChatGPT or similar, is the equivalent of about 10 seconds of streaming Netflix. So I don't watch a lot of Netflix. So does that make it okay for me to use ChatGPT more? I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's wild how much AI is kind of not forced down our throats, and is just part of the world that we live in now, almost without us agreeing to it.
Laura's just put in the chat about the human experience in terms of thinking about increased output. Sometimes we overload ourselves without realizing it, and that can lead to overwhelm, and AI generated content can add to that increased output. Absolutely. It's not just how we use it, but it's how we consume it as well, isn't it? That's a really good point, Laura. Thank you.
There's Leanne's comment as well around basically people expecting to be able to do more with less because of AI, and I think that's a really good point as well. I don't have an answer to that, but I think that if you're seeing that, that's really interesting, because just because it exists doesn't mean that you're using it. But also, depending on what your service is, it can't make cups of tea, it can't nurse people, it can't cook meals, it can't deliver a face-to-face session for a group of young people, it can't research rare diseases, it can't build a building. So I think whilst it absolutely can work, there's a lot of things that it just absolutely cannot do. And I think it's saying to people like, yeah, okay, there's some bits that we could maybe do with it, but it can't replace the service. It doesn't magic up volunteers for us. It might help us with our admin a little bit, essentially, but it can't help us deliver our service any better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation today and for the work that you all do. Fundraising is skilled and relational and often emotionally demanding. So you deserve ways of working that support you as much as you support your cause. Please do not feel guilty about this. Use it mindfully and intentionally. And please remember that it is possible to do good and be well. And thank you ever so much for joining us today.